college basketball having the dullest opening night in all of sports seems like something that's really dumb when you are trying to find a way to get a foothold in a sporting landscape right now that just had the World Series end, that has NFL coming up on crunch time, that has college football playoffs dominating the discussion, that has NBA off and running, right? And with all the drama and storylines that go into any NBA season, why do we have a situation where the best game that you can get is what, Memphis Vanderbilt, is George Mason at Auburn, is St. Louis against Murray State? Like, why are we in this situation, and how do we fix it? TL, I'll go to you first on this.
Well, I was sitting here looking at the KenPom numbers. Out of the top 55 teams on KenPom, the record for the first 2 days of the season is 52-1. The only loss being that of Oklahoma. Like, you could probably fix it by adding a scrimmage and adding an exhibition game and then jumping right in. Because I feel like teams are still trying to figure out, or coaches are still trying to figure out their guys. So it's like, well, let's hold on a second. I'd like to, see our guys compete in a real game before we jump into the big boys. So I understand that part, but maybe add an extra exhibition and then add an exhibition of some substance, as opposed to
like the Gonzaga Tennessee game from last Friday, like the thing that they did for the.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And then you don't have like Bryant winning by 105 points or whatever they want.
Well, I think that there's a couple of things. I think that the first thing is that the fear from coaches is very real. It's very real of losing that game and then a narrative being based off their team, whether it be in the metrics, which is factual, or whether it be how we view a team. Because if you lose, like for Florida State, the amount of goodwill that they have to build to get some respect, it's going to take some time.
Like, yeah, if they lost to Florida on the first night of the season, it'd be whatever. The fact that they have stuff to rebuild is because they lost to
There's something to be said there.
Yeah. 1,000%. But those two coaches, Todd Golden and Leonard Hamilton, you're exactly right in how you're phrasing it. You're exactly right in what you're saying. I agree with you. These two programs should, frankly, they benefit by playing each other. They wouldn't be harmed. But they're not playing each other on opening night. They're just not. And I think the other thing is, like, it's not as if, though, that scheduling doesn't exist, because teams schedule high-level games. Starting next week, we really do have a lot of good games in the sport, and Thanksgiving week is jammed up, frankly, with too many good games. It's hard to keep track of all the good games during Thanksgiving week because all these tournaments are going on. It's over infiltration. As much as college basketball defeated itself on opening night, during Thanksgiving week, some of the great games in the sport are going to get totally washed away. One, for the sport, but two, because you have football and the World Cup going on this year. I think, guys, the biggest thing that's missing from this sport is what we saw in this sport 15 years ago. And that was the sport kicked off with momentum by doing the 24-hour tip-off marathon. You got to bring it back. It builds buzz. It builds nostalgia. It gets certain programs on national television. Certain programs took advantage of that and got on national television and got great exposure from it. A game tipping off at 6 a.m., wherever it might be in the country, was pretty cool. It built buzz around tipping it off. If you're not going to do it with great matchups, then you have to look at it from one of two ways.
Either you build gimmicky, yeah.
Either you build out a marathon, or two, what you say is, okay, ESPN or FS1 or whatever the rights holder might be, you're going to take your conferences and you're going to handpick 2 or 3 teams from those conferences per year. Everybody's got to take a rip of the Band-Aid off. We're going to pair you up with a great mid-major, or with a high-level mid-major, or with a high-level fellow major. You guys are going to play on opening night. This is part of this event. And guess what? Because we pay your conference hundreds of millions of dollars, yes, we're doing this because we need to get some ratings, and we need to be able to generate buzz and interest, which is only going to help you and your program. There's got to be some strategy used, because right now, there's no strategy being used on opening night on a night when any professional sport or even college football in week one, how much buzz is there for any sport when it first starts up? College basketball defeating itself on opening night. The Champions Classic being moved back a week certainly alters it, but there's got to be something more done, because across the country on Monday night, you had 100 and some games going on at one time. And guess what, guys? When we're not interested, the people that love this sport, the casual fan's not going to be interested. Yeah, that's not good.
That's my exact take with it. And I do want to put in the caveat here, because I know people are going to yell at us about this. Last night was election night, right? Midterms elections, pretty important thing in this country. That's why there was no Champions Classic on Tuesday, which is why the schedule got kind of shifted. Normally, that is the season opening kickoff, right? And normally that is pretty good. One thing that I would recommend, and I don't know, Fanta, hopefully your bosses at Fox will listen to this. Instead of doing like the Gavitt games or the Big East Big Ten Challenge later on, like have that be the opening night thing. Have that be what happens the first week of the season, is that, because then everyone's going to pay. Like that's how you get that level of attention for a conference like the Big East. Like, let's be frank, when you don't have fan bases the size of Michigan's and you have fan bases the size of Villanova's, like sometimes you need to find ways to kind of get into that market, right? Like, I don't think I'm.
Can I argue that?
Yeah.
The only reason I would disagree with that is because your reputation is for your conference is built in this part of the season. So I would go against that train of thought, and I would go more towards what the ACC did 2 years ago. And what they did was they had their first game of the season be a conference game, because you can make that up if you have a bad performance at the very beginning, as opposed to your conference struggling whenever you play the Gavitt games first game of the season. Like, you remember how good the Big East did last year and how much that improved the nationwide feeling.
And for what it's worth,
the Big East.
For what it's worth, the Gavitt games do start in 5 days. Like, it's not like the
yeah. But here's the thing with that. Like, trust me, I get it. Trust me, I get it. Right. And I think part of the way that we kind of need to view college basketball, and maybe it would just be better if they made this first week nothing but televised exhibition games that don't count. So we can have it be the second week of the season, be like, this is when it kicks off. We got the Champions Classic. But the fact that you have like a soft open for the season is just so dumb. Like, you have all these people excited about it, and they turn on the TV and it's like, yeah, fuck this. You know, the quality of basketball here isn't good. Why am I watching?
It's kind of like week zero for football. Week zero for football is the same way.
Yeah, but at college, the difference is when you are college football, you're going to dominate the college landscape until your national title game. That's just what it is. When you're college basketball, you have to kind of try to find ways to break that momentum, to get yourself attention. And sometimes it's got to be gimmicky. Like Fanta said, a 24-hour marathon is entirely gimmicky, right? It is the idea of playing games at 4:00 in the morning is so dumb, but so awesome and so much fun. And it makes people pay attention to, like, why are we tipping off at 6 a.m. when was it like Monmouth and Iona tipping off then? Like, in and of itself, just in a vacuum, playing a basketball game at 6 a.m. is like, what the hell are we doing here? But that's how you get attention. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that's how you get attention. And that's a good thing, because it brings, like, you kind of have to think outside the box. Honestly, you know what we need to do? We need to put John Calipari and Eric Musselman in charge of this, because those two dudes know how to get attention for anything. So go over there. Let's make them be the czar of the first day of the NBA. Go come up with something crazy for us to do. Come on, Muss. I know Muss listens to this, man. Come on. I'm begging you, Muss. Let's go. Find a way. Solve this problem for us. Stop playing North Dakota State on the opener. Play somebody, Muss. Make it happen. I'm calling them out.
Here's the thing. I'm with you. Eric Musselman would take this on and do a great job with it. And we need coaches. The coaches got to be forward thinking in this and be willing to challenge themselves. And that's just it. It's not like they're not willing. It's just Terrence makes a really good point.
Yeah.
The Big Ten plays that.
Get used to saying that. Get used to saying that, boys.
The Big Ten plays a week 1 college football game on Thursday night. Week 1. The game was on Big Fox. It has been on Big Fox the past couple of years. This year it was Penn State at Purdue. Now, if Purdue hosted Penn State on a week 5 Saturday game, it would be like the 4th or 5th best game. But on that Thursday night, it was a huge opportunity for Purdue to showcase themselves.
Everybody was locked in. You know how much money I bet on that game? It was like, football's back, baby. Penn State, I can gamble on this. Let's go.
Yes. So I actually think that there's something to be said about a conference stepping in here. And like, I'm not kidding you. If you're the Pac-12, why wouldn't you do this? You know why? Because you're losing to FGCU on opening night. Cal lost to who? They lost to somebody
UC
bad.
Davis. But yeah, you know what? You guys are both right because
Do a conference game.
Yeah, the conference game, because those losses, we know how important all that non-conference wins are to be able to get the metrics for everybody up so you look better in the computer metrics. Taking losses early in the season out of conference could end up bringing everything down, and coaches are scared of that. I'm sure conferences are scared of that. If you have it be a league game, you might take a league loss early on, but it's not going to hurt your conference as a whole, right?
No, and it creates a date. It creates a date in January or February to give a coach some flexibility. It could give you an extra
you can always make that game up. You can always make that game up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's another innovative way. Just saying, another innovative way. Why not start the season with a rematch of the national title game? Like, it's a new college basketball mandate. You say, look, you make it to the title game, you're the stars of March. You're the stars. I know coaches might not be in favor of that, but we're going to start the season for the goodwill of fans in the country with a rematch of that national championship game at a neutral site every year. Do it at Madison Square Garden every single year.
So I have an idea for you guys. I want to know what you think about this. It's been an idea that's been floated by a bunch of people. I think Alan Bykowski, who's a Marquette fan, has been pushing this hard. John Gasaway and Andy Glockner back in the day used to talk about this. European soccer has something called the Champions League. I believe they have it it's called Euro League for hoops, right, T.O.? Where if you win or you finish at the top of your league in Europe, you get entered into the Champions League, which is all of the best teams in Europe, and they create dates throughout the season where you play group play. It basically ends up being like a World Cup kind of a setup. You get group play. If you get out of the group play, then you play knockout stages, right? We all know how the World Cup is set up. If you did something similar for college hoops, where the teams that won every league, right, the regular season conference winners, you create a 32 team knockout tournament, and you play those games throughout the season. You create specific dates. It'll be 5 rounds. It's 5 games. You find specific dates during the season where that takes up part of the non-conference schedule, and you play that out throughout the season. And the first round of those games is on opening night. So you get number one, I guess it would be like number one, let's just say Kentucky against whoever won like the SWAC. And then you'd have number 2, someone against whoever won the MEAC, right? And you just kind of play that out throughout the year. And that's to me, that'd be a really, really good way to generate entrance and generate buzz through 5 weeks of the season where, frankly, there really isn't all that much in November and December.
I love that idea, but you're going to have to make the season 2 months longer.
Yes.
I don't think you would. I don't think you would.
You absolutely would. You absolutely would. Keep in mind too, their national leagues on their own, they only play 1 game a week, even in hoops. Like, I was over there playing in Spain. You only played on Fridays. So like, you had time to put those games in towards the middle of the week, and it completely changed everything around.
So now you have all the thing. They build out the schedule out there with that in mind. Like, that is part of the reason why you only have weekend games in European soccer, is because during the week you play the tournament. Sometimes, and like for the Premier League, right, there's something called the FA Cup, which is every English team plays in the tournament. They have something called the Carabao Cup, which is every team all the way down to like the local club teams. So they build out those schedules so that during the week you can play all of these other competitions. And maybe you need to extend the season out a little bit earlier. Maybe you just need to say, you know what, during those couple of weeks, like, okay, you got the week between the time between the end of finals and the start of conference season. There's 3 weeks there. You can get 3 or 4 games in that schedule. No one's playing anything during the week then anyway, right? You have a week right now where no one's doing anything right now between Monday and Friday. There's like nothing is happening in college basketball. There were 8 games last night. There's 7 games tonight. Some of them are playing non-D1s. You can fit a game in here. And if you got to make the season a week longer, you got to make the season a week longer. If you have to find a way to say, look, you know what, in part of your non-conference contracts, you need to say you got to knock out one of these games just in case I happen to win the league, then that's what it is. You move that game back a year. There's ways to make it work, and it would generate interest, and it would create – we see the NBA trying to create like in-season tournaments now. Here's a perfect way to create an in-season tournament for college basketball and do it all in the non-conference.
The one big thing is the preseason. Here's where your point could be morphed because you say maybe extend the season a week longer or whatnot. The coaches say the preseason runs too long. It runs too long. They get to the point in their practices where they just want to keep the guys healthy, where they're literally worrying about their guys facing each other every day, that they're going to start fighting between themselves because they're facing each other every day. Just saying. So I do think that the preseason in college basketball now runs so long that maybe if you do start the season a week earlier, you could accomplish something. But the fact is, if you said to a lot of the coaches right now, nothing's going on, the coach would look back at you and say, I'm 1-0. I'm 2-0. I got to get wins right now. You know why? These coaches are up at night thinking about their MTEs Thanksgiving week, thinking if I start 0-1 and then I go 0-3, I'm done. And I better have 3 or 4 wins by then. I better have a couple of wins racked up. That's how these coaches think. But I do think the last thought that I have on this is quite simple, and that is, it's not as if in college basketball programs aren't willing to schedule people. You just got to get it now on the front end to create some buzz around your sport and fully understand here that there's no harm. There's no harm to playing somebody on opening night. We're not going to sit here. We've sat here, guys, after the Champions Classic last year. I specifically remember us talking about, because it was Kansas who won that night and it was Duke who won that night. And I remember us saying on the air, Kentucky and Michigan State got things to figure out. But they got plenty of time. It's November. Mm-hmm. That's the logic. That's the rationale that has to be utilized when you've got these opening night games. These coaches have to be willing to understand that they have an eternity to figure it out. And correct me, right? The Champions Classic will be back in the first week of the season next year. This was an election night thing too.
Yes, I believe so. So the schedule got kind of messed up for that, but it's I don't know.
You want more than that. I know you want more than that. You want more than that.
There should honestly be like one marquee matchup every night during that first week. Like, this is the best way to get your team on national television. And here's the biggest thing. If you are a blue blood, right? If you are a top 25 program in America, there's almost no chance that you miss on making it to the NCAA tournament, right? Any team ranked in the top 25 right now is more than likely going to be dancing, right? It depends on, maybe if you're a 4 seed or an 8 seed, right? But all these guys are going to end up being dancing. You have plenty of time to figure it out. There's only benefit here. And if you're Michigan State and you lose to Duke, you know why you're playing first game of the season? That's not going to hurt you at all. It's a free roll. Because if you beat them all of a sudden in November, then you have this great win on your resume. So there's a lot of guys with a lot of cachet built up that should be able to find ways to make it so that we don't have such a void of times. Like every Tuesday and Wednesday night throughout football season, there should be marquee matchups, multiple of them every single night in college basketball, because there's nothing else for people to watch, right? Unless they're going to watch like an NBA game, a random NBA game. There should be a marquee college basketball game every Tuesday and Wednesday night. All